Manchester United are doing everything possible to swap Rashford for Kvaratskhelia. United value Marcus Rashford at £60 million as Barcelona enter the race for his signature. United are doing everything possible to sign Muani, but may struggle financially to do so. Mainoo wants to stay at United, links with an Italian striker, Malasia's exit, and United admit Joshua Zirkzee was a mistake. This plus more in today's video, as we run through all the latest Manchester United news and transfer news that will keep you right up to date with everything. Welcome to Man United Review. My name's Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video. Why not? And let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with the Mainoo stuff, because that was obviously quite rife in the last couple of days regarding the stories and the nonsense we had around United selling him, and which I did say at the time I felt was a little bit blown out of proportion. I think going from the comments on previous videos, I think a majority of you kind of felt the same as well. So Kobbie Mainoo wants to stay at Manchester United, although that is set to require an improved contract offer from the club after discussions. His camp believe he is worth more than what the club are offering. Talks over a new contract are set to continue. Now, that came from Steve Ralston from the Manchester Evening News, who's quite decent when it comes to United news, suggesting that Kobbie Mainoo wants to stay, but they want a better deal. Did say the other day that it felt a little bit like negotiation tactics, and that feels exactly like negotiation tactics with his agent, which is absolutely the right thing that they're going to do. They're going to try and get the best deal possible for their client. So I don't have an issue with those kind of stories coming out, because that's just part of the contract game and the transfer game that you have to play as well. But the important thing is Kobbie Mainoo wants to stay at Manchester United. But how does Ruben Amorim feel around the situation? Because he's the kind of key holder when it comes to players going or staying, because ultimately the club are going to have to listen to his opinion on those sort of things. So on the speculation surrounding Kobbie Mainoo, Amorim had the following to say in his press conference yesterday. So our idea is to always keep the best players and the players to build this club around. But we know the situation we are in. But I love the players, especially the ones that come through the academy. I am really happy with Kobbie. He is improving. So Amorim kind of, I don't want to say dismissing the kind of stories, but saying that they want to keep the best players around and that Kobbie's improving. But again, it goes back to the same thing. Any player that doesn't perform for 1 or 2 years, should be and will be kind of considered to be kind of moved on. So we're only going to keep players that are performing on the pitch going forward. Now we're going away from what the Glazers did, which was just keep players because they're assets against their debt. Ineos are running a football club now, and they want to kind of, get rid of players that aren't performing to bring players in. So yeah, let me know what you think around the Kobbie Mainoo situation. Now, loads of noise over the last 24 hours regarding Rashford. Loads of conflicting stories. So I'm going to summarize a few of the kind of main ones to go through, but really interesting updates to run through here. So Manchester United are leaning towards a straight loan if they allow Rashford to leave in January, then reassess his future in the summer. Adding an option will be considered, but price will have to be right. So Sky Sports suggesting that we might just do a straight loan with Rashford unless we get a good option to buy or obligation to buy price. And we'll go through some prices because there's been a few stories around that in a second. Graham Bailey said AC Milan are pushing ahead with their bid to land Marcus Rashford after securing the sale of Noah Okafor. So that's interesting that AC Milan have now got squad space to potentially bring in Marcus Rashford. However, the biggest news came from the following reports yesterday regarding Barcelona and Marcus Rashford. So Marcus Rashford's brother and agent, Dwayne Maynard, is in Spain today after Barcelona entered the race for the forward. Barcelona going all out for Marcus Rashford. They will bid strongly to secure him on loan until the end of the season. And that came from two. They're decent sources, but they're not the most credible. However, Fabrizio Romano jumped in saying that Barcelona have been informed on conditions of Marcus Rashford's loan deal. Initial direct contact took place this week between Barca and players' camp. So Romano confirming that those stories were true, that Rashford's brother and agent have spoken also to Barcelona. So that's Milan, Juventus. I'll do a summary in a bit actually around the clubs that are kind of linked with. But Barcelona, now the reason why that's kind of important to bear in mind is that when Henry Winter did his initial interview with Rashford, he did say in that piece that his preferred destination would be Spain. And there's always been this kind of connection with Rashford and Barcelona. So that's really kind of interesting. Barcelona is understood to have always been Rashford's preference for a move. Manchester United value Marcus Rashford at around £60 million. I think that's a little bit optimistic. £60 million for Rashford. If he was on like 100 grand a week, then yes, £60 million. But when you've got a player that's on £300,000 plus a week, in the situation that Rashford is in, where he's not been performing very well for the last 18 months, I think 60 million is a bit optimistic, factoring in his wages and his kind of current form, personally. But interesting thing on there that Barcelona has understood to have been Marcus's preference. Let me get my teeth back in. Because that's not the first kind of report that we've heard around Barcelona being where ideally Rashford would want to go. Marcus Rashford is ready to forgive €2 million of his €5 million net salary for the rest of the season to join Barcelona. That came from Sport. They're a decent Spanish outlet as well. Barcelona's plan is to make an offer to sign Marcus Rashford on loan with the option to make the deal permanent. That came from an Italian journalist who's been pretty decent recently. Graham Bailey, I would say take with a pinch of salt, said the following: AC Milan have already held talks, whilst Juventus, Napoli, Bayern Munich, Dortmund and West Ham have also made contact. Atletico Madrid are aware of the situation and have spoken to Rashford's camp, and now we can confirm that Barcelona have also made contact. So Graham Bailey linking everyone else in football with a move for Marcus Rashford. And Dean Jones said the following: Manchester United could be open to a permanent deal for a £35 million fee for Marcus Rashford. This as Ineos looks to solve its financial problems and begin the process of rebuilding the team for Amorim. That's probably more realistic, £40 million as a permanent deal for Rashford, considering his wages when you factor all of that in. And as I mentioned before, his form and the fact he wants to leave. We want to sell him. We're in a position of weakness when it comes to Rashford, unfortunately, because he's not a player that's in form and he's not a player that we particularly want to keep. And it's not a player that wants to stay. So it does weaken your... Like, if all that was the opposite, then yes, 60 odd million for Rashford would probably be cheap for him. So 35-40 million pounds seems the most kind of realistic one. But yeah, the Barcelona links have been there for a while. And the interesting thing about Barcelona, because I know some of you will probably say this in the comments, right? They just sold like €100 million worth of VIP seats. That's how they've got the money to be able to register Dani Olmo. If you remember back to previous videos when we've been talking about Dani Olmo, and I said Barcelona will find a way. They always do. They always find a way to get money in, to buy players and give them excessive salaries and stuff. They just always seem to find these loopholes, or they just sell something at, in the future, do you know what I mean? They get around these kind of loopholes, and that's what they've been doing for the last 10 to 15 years, because they've been for the last 10, 15 years, they've been in a worse financial situation than we have, yet they've spent more money and pay more wages than we do as well, which is insanity. So that's one to keep an eye on, the Barcelona kind of link. There's rumours that they might be selling Araujo to Juventus as well, and that would free up some cash. So, we'll have to kind of wait and see. But the more interest we get in Marcus Rashford, the better it is for us, because the more, teams would be willing to pay more of his wages or give us a higher loan fee if it's going to be a loan, or we get teams actually making a bid for him. Again, the more interest we get, the better regarding it. That's kind of what happened in the summer with Mason Greenwood, wasn't it? There was a few clubs interested, and in the end, we got a reasonable deal for considering his circumstances as well out of it. But this is a list of all the clubs so far linked with a move for Rashford. So AC Milan, Dortmund, Juventus, Arsenal, West Ham, Barcelona, Monaco, Como and Atletico. I would say Atletico and Como, box them off. They've been dismissed already. Monaco, there was a report yesterday from The Independent, which has been dismissed by a couple of other journalists as well. So again, I would box those off. We're not going to sell him to a Premier League club. So Arsenal and West Ham can be boxed off as well. So you've got Milan, Dortmund, Juventus and Barcelona, in my opinion, who I would kind of say keep an eye on one of those. I think Milan, we've just mentioned their squad space. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the links there, that could be possible, but Barcelona are definitely one that I would keep an eye on, because they've now got money effectively, so they could even probably bid and buy, like for £35 million, they could probably even put in a bid and buy Rashford. But whether that's what they want to do in January, we'll have to wait and see. But let me know what you think. That's all the kind of latest regarding Marcus Rashford. So just one or two stories to run through regarding that. And that's summarized as well. There was way more stories, but some of it was coming from like crappy places, which I'm not gonna bring. If there's like one or two of them, then yeah, I'll bring them to you. But when there was like, I literally had about 13 slides going through everything, and I was like, that's nonsense anyway. So, but let me know what you think about the whole kind of Rashford situation. Do you think, and Barcelona specifically, do you think there's something in that? Do you think that would be where he would end up? Let me know in the comments below. Obviously, now this story was really interesting. So, obviously, yesterday there was loads of talk around Kvaratskhelia and Man United. We had like L'Equipe and journalists like that kind of suggesting that Manchester United were going to be in the race. Talk of a swap deal. Romano and David Ornstein came out with updates, not mentioning Manchester United at all. Romano was saying that PSG are ahead of the race and they're looking to kind of buy him. And all these kind of reports, again, loads of different reports linking United with Kvaratskhelia. Some I think were just clickbait. Some might be credible. And L'Equipe have come out today, and L'Equipe are quite a good source when it comes to PSG news and French football as well. This is why I'm bringing it to you, because this isn't like a bullshitty, gossipy place. They are actually fairly decent. Saying that Manchester United are doing everything possible to convince Napoli to do a swap deal of Kvaratskhelia and Rashford. Napoli will ask for money included in the deal, fair enough. PSG are still in the race, but not ready to offer the 80 million euros asked from Napoli. So that's an interesting kind of development. Now, I want to see a lot more credibility personally before that's to be believed. And at the time of recording this video, I was hoping this came out about an hour ago, before sitting down and doing this video. There's not been really like any more kind of updates at the time. I'll obviously bring you anything if anything kind of comes out regarding it as well, but that's an interesting one. I mean, that would make perfect sense for everyone involved. Rashford for Kvaratskhelia, plus some cash from us for him. He's on a much lower wage than Rashford as well. You know, it's just whether Napoli could afford Rashford's wages. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those, isn't it? But I'll bring you any updates. Now, if you thought that the rumours regarding Kvaratskhelia not leaving Napoli were not true, then Antonio Conte himself has confirmed that he's going to be leaving. He said Kvaratskhelia was asked to leave the club. I spoke to Khvicha and he confirmed his plan to leave the club immediately. That came from Fabrizio Romano. So he's definitely available in January, and it's going to be a case of who moves, who offers him the right kind of money. We're not in a position where we can buy him financially without selling somebody first. A swap deal would probably be about all we could offer, I think, Napoli at the moment. So we'll keep an eye on it for you. Let me know, though, what you think in the comments. Now, another player that we've been heavily linked with is Kolo Muani. So let's go through the latest there. So Manchester United requested information on Muani's situation, but Tottenham and Juventus are ahead in the race to sign him. That came from Fabrizio Romano. Florian Plettenberg said the following: Manchester United's efforts to sign Muani are becoming more concrete. United are now determined to do everything possible to get him this month. Recently, there have been very specific talks with his management, and direct negotiations with PSG are expected to follow. United are considering a loan deal, ideally with an option to buy. Other clubs are still in the race, including Chelsea, Villa, Tottenham, Juventus, AC Milan, and others. Now, that came from Florian Plettenberg as well. The belief around Muani, though, is that Tottenham, at the moment, at the time of recording this video, are the leading candidates to potentially get him, but United can't be ruled out until David Ornstein said the following. So firstly, Chris Wheeler said that Manchester United's interest in Muani has cooled. David Ornstein said that Muani's salary is an issue for Manchester United due to the club's PSR situation. And they go through what David Ornstein actually had to say around the PSR situation before this news broke in a second as well. Now, that's probably because at the moment we haven't got rid of anybody and we're on a PSR tightrope anyway. Without adding an additional player and an additional salary. If we'd like, I don't know, if Ericsson, for example, or Lindelof had gone, then we could afford, obviously, Muani's salary. I think he's on around 150 grand a week. At PSG, obviously we're not going to pay all of that, but that's how kind of tight our PSR restrictions are financially. Or, you know, you could look at this a couple of ways. Are we just, you know, pulling away because we're looking at somebody else, potentially, like the swap deal with Kvaratskhelia, for example, because if we swap Rashford for Kvaratskhelia, we're not going to need Muani anyway. You know, or are we that kind of financially screwed where we do need to let players go, and that leaves other teams in a better position to get these deals done, and we're going to be scrambling around at the end of the window once one or two players do get removed to try to then bring somebody in? Who knows? We'll have to see how it kind of plays out. But let me know what you think about the Muani situation in the comments. Now, one of the reasons why, again, we could have pulled out from Muani is because we're planning more for the summer. One of those players that we could be getting in the summer is Viktor Gyökeres, heavily linked with us even before Amorim came in. And obviously those links have been accelerated or exaggerated, whichever way you want to kind of think about it, since Amorim came in. But Viktor Gyökeres and Sporting have a gentleman's agreement which will allow Gyökeres to leave the club for as little as between 58.6 million and 62.8 million pounds. This release clause is valid for Manchester United and some big teams. So that's from Record in Portugal. Remember, there was this kind of story before saying that Viktor Gyökeres' release clause is like 80 million euros or something like that. But he's got an agreement, and this is the reason why he was staying at Sporting this season, was because he had an agreement to say, okay, well, if you give us one more year, we'll let you go to a big team for less than what your release clause is. And that was kind of the agreement that they had, like a gentleman's agreement or verbal agreement, whatever you kind of, however you want to phrase it. So it's one of the reasons why we're not going for Muani, because we want to save that money so that we can make a big money move for someone like Gyökeres in the summer. You know, who knows? He's definitely a player of interest. I think him, Osman, you know, somebody of that kind of stature, if they're going to be available in the summer for cheap, but loads of other clubs are going to be looking at them as well that might be in a better position with us, because remember, Champions League's going to be an issue, and that's going to be important for some players as well. So we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on it. But obviously, we would be in a good position with Amorim, knowing him, and obviously kind of buying him and making him the kind of striker that he is as well. So that would kind of maybe go for us. But, you know, if he wants to play Champions League football, unless we win the Europa League, that's going to be unlikely, isn't it? But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Now, another striker we've been linked with is Manchester United and Leicester, interested in 19-year-old forward Francesco Pia Esposito, who is on loan from Inter Milan. Now, that came from Alfredo Padula. Alfredo Padula is a decent source, not the best, but not the kind of worst out there as well. So that's an interesting option for a couple of reasons. One, fits the mold of being young, up and coming. You know, he's obviously 19 years old. He's playing in Serie B at the moment this season. 9 goals, 18 appearances. 9 goals, 1 assist. He's 6'2", and he's out of contract in the summer as well. So that's probably a more realistic one for our financial situation, isn't it? Getting a 19-year-old for free, because we can't afford anybody else, because the Glazers have sucked every penny out of the club and left us in an absolute financial mess. That one's probably more realistic than the Gyökeres one. But obviously I'm joking with that one. But, you know, really interesting option. Apart from that, don't know too much about him. Not a player that I've heard of or seen a lot of. Apparently he's good. He's seen as like a wonder kid, seen as the next kind of up-and-coming Italian striker. You know, looks pretty decent from his you know, from the brief kind of like research that I did for him, but I don't want to say too much because I haven't watched him like play anything. So you'll have to let me know in the comments what you think. Now, let's go through the PSR stuff. So obviously we brought you the report there saying from David Ornstein, saying that United are on a PSR tightrope and might not be able to afford Kolo Muani. This is what he had the following to say on this Athletic podcast. So he said, it's not so binary and black and white that you can just say, get players out to bring players in. The way it's been explained to me is that Manchester United are going to be okay on PSR this month. So what he was kind of referring to or meaning, reading between the lines, is that we don't have to sell players this month to comply with PSR. We're going to be fine. for PSR rules the way that we are. So we're not looking to, sell Casemiro or sell Rashford or whatever in order to comply with PSR. But we can't bring players in without removing players. So we're on that kind of fine tightrope because he said it's not like the Wolves are collapsing on their financial situation. It's not great. Clearly, they've got work to do. But I do think there's a bit of scope to do something. So I think what he was kind of referring to, reading between the lines, is that for PSR, we'll be fine for the rest of the season. If we don't spend anything and we don't bring anyone in, we'll be fine with the PSR rules for this year. However, there's scope to do something does kind of suggest a little bit like what we've been saying, sell to buy, or maybe somebody cheap like a Naipan. Breaking news, actually, just as at the time of recording this video, that Manchester United are not in the race to sign Sphere Naipan. Arsenal are interested. So that's came from, who's that from? Just 2 seconds. Sorry, it's literally just coming out as I'm recording. Norwegian journalists, don't know the credibility, so Norwegian journalists are saying that United are not in the race for Naipan. Arsenal are interested, which I did bring you the other day, a little bit of an update, so just to interrupt myself there. So somebody like Naipan, though, for example, who's not going to be massively expensive, they could probably manoeuvre around, but, to get an Osman or a Kvaratskhelia or somebody of that nature is not going to happen in January without sales. So that's where we are in terms of PSR. So in terms of meeting the PSR rules, we're fine. But to do anything in the January window would either have to be something really cheap. And, going off of what Ornstein was saying about Muani, if we can't afford, to pay some of his £150,000 a week, you would suggest that it's going to be somebody of like a young player that's going to cost 20 grand a week or something like that, for example, or we're going to need a sell to buy, and that's the way with the way that it is. It's been like that we've been saying that for a while anyway. The Mirror said the following: Marcus Rashford's exit is not the only one that Man United are working on. So Jim Ratcliffe also has the sales of Casemiro and Antony on his mind. The trio's exit have been deemed as priority for the club, with Casemiro earning £350,000 a week and Antony £200,000 a week, while Rashford would offer an ability to gain pure profit in terms of profit and sustainability rules. So Jim Ratcliffe wants to knock around £1 million off United's weekly wage budget to help them comply with PSR. So that came from the Mirror, suggesting that Ratcliffe and United are looking to remove those free players in January. I don't necessarily think it's to help. I think that more to maybe bring players in or to help us for the summer so we can have like a big kind of splurge in the summer. But because obviously I believe Ornstein more than I do the Mirror when it comes to PSR, and Ornstein was saying we're fine with PSR, it's just obviously we want to progress, we're going to need a sell to buy. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Joshua Zirkzee to Manchester United hasn't really gone to plan, and there is a feeling inside United that was a mistake. So Ornstein kind of suggesting that people inside Manchester United feel that signing Joshua Zirkzee was a bit of a mistake. And I mean, it's not exactly been the best transfer that we've done recently. Let's say that, especially in this summer, because Mazraoui, I think, has been outstanding. De Ligt's been good. Ugarte, outstanding so far. Or when he's been kind of playing, he's been outstanding recently. Shaky start, but been really good. Lenny Yoro is young and up and coming. I think he's done nothing wrong anyway in the kind of few appearances that he's made. Zirkzee is the one that you kind of think in the summer, he's not hit the ground running quite as well as the others. He's still young, though, still time. Ornstein has been saying, though, that he's going to be staying, so I don't think that necessarily means that we're going to be selling him or moving him on this window, because he wants to stay, and Ornstein has said that he wants to stay. But interesting that they've admitted it's not gone to plan and that they feel that it was a mistake. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Como are trying to sign Tyrell Malacia. That came from Alfredo Padula, is a decent source. So that would be one to keep an eye on. That would be interesting. I don't think he fits in the long-term plans at United. It would be weird selling our only left-footed left-back that's available in January, but then if you get the money, get him off the wages, I don't necessarily think we would then be able to replace him, because the left-back news is pretty much gone very quiet. but it is still early in the transfer window, so that would be an interesting one to kind of see what happens. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let me know what you think about all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that's you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.